Howdy, folks. This is Dr. Matt Grisham, Director of the Grimm Family Center for Organic Production and Research at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and you're joining us for Organic Chat. So why don't you introduce yourself?
So my name is Nascimento, and I'm a fourth-year agricultural communications major with a minor in ag business. I'm originally from Turlock, which is in the Central Valley of California. Born and raised there, and I came out here for college. I started here actually my sophomore year because I stayed home freshman year because of COVID. So,
oh, yeah, right.
And then, I basically immediately was interested in this position because she's my roommate now. At the time, she was just my friend from home. Had gotten a job on the organic farm, and she loved it, and it was something that I was just really excited to get involved in because I had a garden SAE through FFA, which is a supervised agricultural experience, through FFA, where I helped my dad in our vegetable garden. I basically took it over from him, our vegetable garden at home, and I loved it, and I was so excited to work on the farm, and I've been here for almost 2 years now. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then, of course, since then you've joined us with the center as our sort of, as I like to say, social media maven, manager, which is great because I'm miserable at it. So I got to ask you an immediate question, though. So what were your favorite things to grow in your garden in Turlock?
The tomatoes always did really well in our garden. I don't really like tomatoes, which is really unfortunate because that would be it would be so convenient to like snack on a tomato while I'm out there harvesting or whatever. But I can't really do that because I do not enjoy the taste. But I love the smell of tomato plants.
Oh, yeah.
They smell so good.
Yeah, they do.
I want a candle in that scent.
So, Mary, what does organic agriculture mean to you? When you think about organics in agriculture, what is that all about?
So, I actually do not come from an organic agriculture background. My only experiences are from working here on the farm. So, before I started here, I didn't really have any background knowledge on it at all. I didn't know what it meant to grow organically, and now I've kind of come to this understanding sort of where soil health is like the main goal of organic farming, and I love that part of it. I think that it's super cool and super interesting, and I did take one soil science class here.
Oh, great.
So I have a very basic understanding of it, but I love learning about soil health when it comes to organic farming especially. And then also just sustainability is something else that I think about when it comes to organic agriculture. Water use and sustainable farming practices in general with like carbon emissions and things like that. I find that really interesting as well. Something else that
And it's funny how so much of that comes back to soil health, right?
Yes, exactly.
I mean, just having organic matter means that you can hold on to water, you can hold on to nutrition, you can do things that you can't really do if you don't have organic matter in a healthier soil.
Exactly, yeah. And it's also something that I feel like I see the soil. You can just really see how the soil is doing. Like you could just look at it and you're like, ooh, that soil needs some work. It's really interesting to like see the real difference in the soil based on like management practices and things like that. I find that
do you tend to smell soil when you first come across a new soil? Do you like try to get a handful of it and take a big whiff?
I do love the smell of soil. I have some pretty embarrassing stories from when I was a kid about like eating dirt and things like that.
Well, I think we've all done that.
We all done that.
My parents have some horrible stories about me and a fish pond that they were cleaning out.
Yeah.
I won't go any farther. And then my middle son, actually, when we were growing chickens in Michigan, there's a story about mucking out a chicken house. And interesting.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So you're in good company there.
That makes me feel better.
But yeah, I've always, it's amazing. I mean, how you can smell soil health too. And I mean, I've been told that that's the actinomycetes, which hopefully I said correctly as an entomologist, but there is that very particular smell and the friability and the texture and the
interesting.
Yeah, it's and it's interesting how much of a feeling it is sometimes as much as anything, you know. I mean, obviously we can measure so many things about soils, but there is that sort of experience of it.
Yep.
So it's really
Yeah, it just, the soil here is so different from the soil that I grew up with. Even just going back home I went home a couple weeks ago, and I was walking through our little garden, and it's just so much sandier there. And I almost forgot what that was like after working on the farm for so many years with the like heavy clay that we have.
It is. It's turns into concrete in a hurry.
Oh yeah.
Which for me, it's funny because it's the soils here are very similar to what we grew up with what I grew up with in our backyard gardens in Davis. We actually had the very similar, really heavy.
Really?
Yeah. That's, I mean, it's hard to drive a shovel into it when it's dry.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And but other parts of the world I've lived in, certainly like the Kansas soils I was familiar with our gardens there were sandy, loamy, and really easy to till and plant in. But yeah, it is so fascinating how those differences carry through. Yeah. What have you brought back to the garden with you from what you've learned here at Cal Poly in the organic farm?
Well, I think going back to the tomatoes, we kind of do things differently here than we do at home, just with the way we tie them up and things like that, trellising them. I thought that was kind of interesting because I had spent a lot of time. We used sawhorses actually at home.
Oh, okay.
And then I don't even remember, sawhorses and some like biodegradable string twine things that my dad just uses for. He's an almond farmer. So
oh, okay. Yeah.
They tie trees with this stuff all the time. It's like a rope of some kind.
You say it the northern way.
I do.
Almond. Yeah.
I do.
From Turlock, I would have expected an almond, but yeah.
I think a lot of people in Turlock say
it's kind of
almond. It depends also if your family is in the industry or not.
Okay.
I notice a lot more with kids whose families in the industry that they say almond a lot more.
Yeah.
But even my roommate, who's from the same hometown as me, well, she lives like 5 minutes from me, she says almond, and I give her a hard time for that.
Well, as a Yolo County kid, it was always almond. And all the walnut and almond growers that I knew growing up, of course, it was almond. And do we owe it to the audience to tell them why we say almond?
Oh yes, absolutely. It's because when you shake the almonds, you knock the L out of them, so they're almonds on the tree, almonds off the tree.
Yep. Yep. So anyone who's seen a shaken tree harvester will get that, because it is a pretty.
You really do.
And I've seen this in tart cherries too in other parts of the world, but it's pretty dramatic what we do to those trees to get the fruit off. It's
And they survive somehow.
Sometimes they don't.
Sometimes they don't. And you can actually have really bad management with that. So you have to be very careful who you have in
Absolutely.
there.
It's fun. I was just talking with some, I think they were from the more southern regions. They would have said almond, but some almond growers, I guess. And they were talking about how, a green shaker, so someone who hasn't done it before can be like the worst pest management
detrimental
issue that you have. And
big pest.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes me think, it's kind of like, you think about it, you never want to be the first person that a surgeon's working on, right? You never really want that. I mean, but they have to have a first person, right?
Yeah.
And I was thinking when I was having this conversation with this, it was actually a PCA, but I was thinking the same thing. It's like, you kind of don't want to be the first. Yeah. You don't want to be the first orchard to have a new, shaker crew boss, because it could get exciting. Yeah, my dad, they had a situation like that years and years ago, and they're still dealing with ramifications. Oh yeah. It's the trees. Well, they'll just. It takes them a while to die, but they'll die eventually. It's kind of sad seeing them. Yeah, well, it's that sort of healthy plant thing, right? Yeah. You've made a foundational, fundamental change to that plant's health, and now there's all kinds of fungi and insects and things that will take advantage of that. I'm not up on my almond diseases, but we saw this definitely in apples in the Midwest, where you do a little bit of damage and then you get white and black rot, and then maybe you get some bark beetles, and then your trees are dead. Downhill from there, and it's sad. But that's one of the weird things about perennial crops in general, I think. I did some high density apples. I put some in professionally with Michigan State, and those turned out well because it wasn't me doing the training. The ones I did were just miserable in my backyard. But But it's weird. It's like with perennial crops, it's like it takes you 3 years to know how badly you've screwed up. I mean,
and then it shows up, and then you see all your mistakes.
Well, and as a parent, I sometimes say it's kind of like parenting.
It is,
you
yeah.
know, it's
actually,
like you don't really know if what you did was a good thing or a bad
thing. How is this gonna turn out
for at least 3 years, and then it's like, oh wow, that structure's no good. And
well, we can't go back to 3 years earlier.
Yeah, that's a bunch of blind wood that's not going to produce any crop. Yeah. Well, hey, maybe that's a great segue to the the questions we talked about today. So, in that sort of flavor of mistakes that you don't see for 3 years, what would you say?
Oh gosh.
what has been sort of like your biggest farming, quote unquote, mistake?
This is actually something that has stuck with me. This happened last summer.
Oh wow, it's a recent one.
Well, actually, it happened summer. I guess that would be 2 summers ago then.
Yeah.
It wasn't this last summer.
So summer 2022?
I forget that. Yeah, it was summer 2022.
COVID has made everything interesting.
Yeah. It was summer 2022. I was on the farm for the summer. And I had gone back to take the tractor implement back over to, we had been laying beds, so shaping beds.
Bed shaping.
Bed shaping. Yes, we were taking the bed shaper back over, and I was driving, so my coworkers were helping me to unhook from the back.
Okay.
And I had hopped off and everything, shut the tractor off, put it down. It was fine. We got it unhooked, and I go to drive away, and I had forgotten that the PTO, the power takeoff.
Yep.
Which is what they use to basically transfer power from the engine to the implement.
Yeah, whatever implement. It's a spinning shaft, and it basically hooks into a receptacle on the implement. So whether it's a lawnmower or a planter or anything that needs that energy, it's what it gets.
Yep. So the bed shaper was hooked up to that, and I drove away with it still attached.
Oh no! But the 3-point was
the hitch was all unhooked.
Right.
That was fine.
Okay.
I think we'd been using a quick hitch, so that was relatively easy to get unhooked. But then we spent about an hour trying to get it pushed back in, and we eventually did, which was a miracle.
Wow.
But there were there were 4 or 5 of us there.
Yeah,
I think there were at least 4, potentially 5. It was just very embarrassing in front of my coworkers. I was the longest staffed employee at that time. Because everyone basically goes home for the summer.
Yeah.
And so I was still, I wouldn't say, I hadn't even been there for a year yet. So I wasn't very well seasoned, but I feel like I shouldn't have been making that mistake at that point.
Well, but that's how you learn, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
That's learned by doing.
Exactly.
Or by, making mistakes.
Luckily, I did Google, can you put the PTO back in? And it all worked out. It was fine. We didn't have to call my boss, which was a relief.
Yeah.
I don't think he knows, so... Dan, if you're listening, that did happen.
So did the PTO pull out on the tractor, or did it pull out on the implement?
It pulled out on the tractor.
Ooh,
so it came out. It was still attached to the tractor.
Oh, yeah.
And it had been fully way past extended.
Yeah.
Way past its limit for how far it could be extended.
So we have a tractor with a prehensile PTO.
It's a little. Right. I mean, it still works.
Yeah.
We've been using it. No problems.
Yeah.
So. If there is a problem, that's probably what it was.
Yeah, well,
but
it's old equipment. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So how about, why don't we turn the tables on that? So what would you say is your biggest sort of eureka, aha, success moment with farming?
It actually relates back to the PTO again.
Really?
Which, this PTO we have a long history. My biggest success, and it's something that, I don't know, it kind of just helped me feel really capable in my abilities. That was the day that I hooked up the PTO and the quick hitch and everything for the was it the mower or the bed shaper? I feel like I should know this. I was so proud of myself. I'm actually not sure. I think it was the mower, because the mower is pretty tricky.
All right.
So it was the day that I got that fully hooked up to the PTO and the hitch all by myself with no supervision and I just I don't think I was that new at that point, but I was I'm just going to see if I can do it, because in the past I had tried and I had kind of gotten stuck at some point and I would have to call someone for backup. But that day I got it all by myself and I was so proud of myself. And it just was kind of reassurance that I might not have thought that I was capable, but I actually was.
Right.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sometimes you need that little push.
Well, and, towards that experiential learning that, really is the Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, since there's 3 Cal Polys now, brand. I mean, that's a big part of it, and something I reflect on a lot, as we're training students, and this may sound terrible, it's they can break our equipment and ruin our beds. Not that you told me that you ruined a bed, or miss trellis or miss prune or whatever else, so that they don't have to do that, to yours when you hire them.
Yep. Later on.
Because that's a big part of learning, right? I mean, as I've gotten older, certainly I've really come to appreciate that it's when things go sideways, that's really when I have learned the most. And it's not to say you don't learn when things go well, but I take it, so the second PTO experience we talked about, in terms of history, that was after the sort of not so stellar PTO experience.
Yeah, you have ups and downs with the PTO, but that was, I'm pretty sure that was after.
Well, do you think that experience, so do you think that it's interesting, we started with soil and now we're talking about ag machinery. But, so do you think that the sort of oh crap moment you had, was that central to the success that you had later on? Or do you think that it played a big role in your comfortability, you being comfortable with doing this thing that maybe you weren't comfortable doing prior?
I think whatever comfortability I had built up to that point, it was I kind of took a couple steps backwards after that, and I was like, well,
it's normal.
But you know what, I check very religiously now every time I go to disconnect the implements. I'm always very, very careful about that PTO.
Because you've had that experience of eating bitter after things went a little not the way you wanted them to.
Exactly.
That's awesome. So what would you tell other folks who are thinking about getting engaged with, so for Cal Poly students who are here who are interested in getting engaged with the College of Ag and Food environmental science programs and maybe the farming community here in particular, or for folks who are thinking about Cal Poly, I mean, what would you say are the top 3 things to experience?
Okay, well, something that the top 3 things to experience. I definitely recommend, if you are curious about either the conventional farm or the organic farm or the conventional orchard, just take a walk out to the farm and kind of see what it's all about. I mean, if you do want to work here or even take an enterprise, I feel comfortable I wouldn't say I make a lot of mistakes, but I'm saying I do feel comfortable when I do make mistakes as long as they're small, which I've never made a massive mistake, which is good.
We'll let Dan comment on that later.
I don't know about that one. Okay. I feel like I have some pretty great bosses and I work with really great people, and I just, feel comfortable, learning by doing, definitely. I never feel like I did it wrong, that's really bad, and I'm never going to recover from that. There's definitely some leeway, and it's a great learning environment. It's very set up for you to succeed. But also when you don't succeed, it's set up for you to learn from that and keep pushing forward. Other things that they should get involved in, let me think. There's always, there's a lot of, going back to getting involved on the farm or enterprises, I would definitely take enterprise classes in as many areas as you can. Fit as many enterprises into your schedule as you can. The enterprises are great. It's not just animal production or, the farm. There's also, I've been in video production enterprises. There's all sorts, even the one where they make podcasts. That's sort of an enterprise in itself. It's just very learn by doing, hands-on. I definitely recommend that. Departments send out emails with potential enterprises all the time, so just keep an eye out for that. And if you're a prospective student, definitely take enterprises.
So come see us at the farm.
Yes, come see us at the farm.
Yeah, we're pretty friendly for the most part, as long as we've been fed.
Exactly.
And then take lots of enterprises. That's what I'm hearing.
Those are the two. Yes. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, Mary, thank you so much for taking this time. And you're wearing two hats at this point because I mean, it comes up in the closing credits, but Mary is actually our production engineer as well as today's guest. But thank you so much for taking the time with us and for all you're doing with the center and sharing your experience.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Organic Chat. This podcast is recorded on the Cal Poly campus. Production provided by our production engineer, Mary Nascimento.